Were you conflicted about making the decision to leave the department at a time that sounds so precarious?
No, not at all, because I'm not naive enough to think that, while one person can certainly make a difference, I don't attribute to myself to be the sole possessor of the skills necessary to keep the department moving forward. I get to tell the story of the department. I get to tell the story of an extraordinary group of men and women, leadership team, cops in the street, who are making a difference, and I am very comfortable that that leadership team, particularly if the next chief is selected from them, there'll be very little change in the leadership team other than maybe some people moving around taking different seats on the bus. But there won't be a lot of them being ejected or a lot leaving willingly. So the leadership of the department will stay focused, and they are very aware of the economic circumstances that the city finds itself in. And something I might also point out, that there's been a great belief that the worsening economy was going to worsen the crime rate. It did not in this city. That you talked about unemployment was around 4 or 5% when I got here 7 years ago. It's now almost 14 or 15% in the city. We have seen no indication of economic impact on our crime rate. Shoplifting arrests aren't up, stolen cars aren't up. Crime is down for the 8th straight year in every category. And I believe strongly that a major reason for that is the Los Angeles Police Department, our focus on crime, and our growth. The public view the public through the trash fee, and what the city council tends to forget is that trash fee was promised. And right now they're finagling, as politicians tend to do. Well, we didn't quite mean that. I'm sorry, when we sold and when I went out and advocated the trash fee increase, it was the idea that money would be used to support public safety. So if they're going to reduce the department by 500 officers, well, they should basically give you back half of your trash fee increase, because that's what the trash fee increase was supposed to pay for. And that investment has paid off significantly, so that during the time, this economic situation, which is the worst in this city since the 1930s, we have not seen a growth in crime during that time. That the economy is an influence, it's not a cause. The cause of crime is human behavior, and we have a growing number of cops that are able to affect that human behavior and do it in a way that it's no longer seen as corrupt, brutal, or racist. Not saying we're perfect. The LA Times story this morning about the 3 officers who have been indicted for perjury. The good news aspect of that, and I'll always find a glass half full rather than a glass half empty, is that we, when made aware of that, investigated it thoroughly with the support of the district attorney, went forward and got those indictments, because we understand that perjury is the worst sin that a police officer can commit, because it would undermine the whole criminal justice system. It was believed that cops were not telling the truth under oath. So we take that seriously, and that is a change, if you will, that we don't sweep it under the rug anymore, that we are operating with a much higher level of transparency than we did in the past.
If
you got some sunshine lotion, we'll move over here and you go out in the sun.
that's okay. It's okay. It's okay. No, it's fine. It's fine. Thank you. No, vitamin D is important. So what, you have a do-over pass for one thing that you've done in the last 7 years. You get a do-over, you get to do something differently. Something you did that you would have approached differently. What is it?
That would have been within the first month of being appointed by Jim Hahn. I'm coming from the East Coast with strong mayors, certainly Giuliani, strong mayors in Boston that I was familiar with, Tom Menino. And coming into a city that's just gone through a charter reform where supposedly the powers of the mayor had increased, and that the idea was to try and get to a strong mayor form of government, which I strongly advocate, rather than trying to deal with, in this case, 15 city council members who are primarily focused on their area of electability and then the city second. And Jim Hahn at that time had the audacity to advocate for the growth of the department by 300 officers. We had 9,211 when I arrived. I'd done a study that indicated we should have at a minimum 12,500. So the mayor was committed to trying to grow the police department to address what at that time was 3 years of crime increase, and also the loss of almost 1,000 officers who had fled this department because of morale situations and a whole range of issues. And the mayor went out and advocated for that, and the city council at that time voted against that measure. And I made the mistake of not appreciating the political reality of this city about the influence of the city council, and criticized the council for the rejection of that growth, the 300 officers, and did it in a way where words hurt and come back to haunt you. And made remarks to the effect that the council members need to go to a few more funerals of young innocents who were killed in gang violence, and they'd have more of an appreciation of the importance of more police to protect their constituents. And I've come to understand that to a person, every one of those council members that spend phenomenal time in their districts, going to those funerals, etc., didn't fully appreciate that and attacked them in a way that I ended up having to apologize for the remark. But the reality of what I was trying to do was to focus attention that here was a body of people that were voting against the critical need of 300 additional officers. And this was just right after 9/11. Also, with the idea of the counterterrorism threat to this city, I now have 300 officers in counterterrorism. At that time, there were about 22 in the whole department. We now, along with New York, probably have the most sophisticated counterterrorism police operations in America. We are celebrated for them. And as the events of the last couple of weeks have shown, that with the incidents in New York and Denver, you're going to need to keep that commitment of resources to that issue. Because a terrorist incident of any type in this city will so totally unravel the economy that is so dependent on tourism, the movie industry, that we need to invest in that. I have had to fight tooth and nail against certain city council members. There's a former council member here, Jack Weiss, who got beat up all the time by many of his colleagues because of his commitment and understanding to one of the needs for the growth of the department was to meet the new paradigm after 9/11, terrorism. A single act of terrorism would have more impact than an increase of 50 gang murders in this city. And so the idea of the mistake was not fully appreciating the political dynamics in this city, in which the council still is a very strong council, and the mayor's position in this city still is not as powerful as some of the other cities that I've worked in. And I think that's unfortunate, because I'm a strong supporter of strong mayoral form of government, because it speeds things up. And in this city, the speed of bureaucracy is in reverse. It just doesn't go forward. And it just, it's horrendous, horrendous.
You know, you said before that in New York, you duke it out and you move on with it, and here people hold on to it. How much of that problem that you faced with the city council was just not anticipating that that was the culture here, and where do you think that culture comes from here?
I think it's ironically, when we talk about the Wild West, you think of those two gunfighters standing in the middle of the street and basically shooting it out or slugging it out. But there is a difference, East Coast, West Coast. East Coast, it's much more in your face, bloody the nose, then go out and have a drink. Here it's basically don't have it out and hold a grudge and try to undermine each other at every turn. And I don't know whether that's the ethos of the movie industry that's now basically gone into the rest of the society out here, but totally different. And my style is basically fight it out, get it done, and move on. I don't hold a grudge. Life goes on. I can honestly say there's not a single person that if I were to meet today that I've had a fight with or a grudge with that I would not shake his hand, her hand, say hello, and life's too short, and get it over with instead of this lingering, kind of payback. And this city is almost a city that doesn't work in so many respects, and it's frustrating. It's because the New York Minute, the reason that phrase is so appropriate for New York, things get done seemingly much faster back east, Chicago, another city I love. Here, it's the idea of two recent incidents. Marijuana, medical marijuana in the clinics. 4 or 5 years ago, when the medical marijuana bill was passed here in California, 5 years later, we're still wrestling with regulations over that industry. So we now have about 700, 800 of these crazy things all over the city. No regulation, increasing crime around them. And, it takes forever. The counterterrorism issue. I had a fight with Jack Weiss at my side, along with Mayor Hahn and then Mayor Villaraigosa, for years to get the authorization to increase the number of officers assigned to counterterrorism. Fortunately, as chief of police, I have total discretion on assignment of people, so before I had the authorization, I already had the 300 people in there, and then got the authorization. If I waited for authorization, I'd probably still have 22 officers there instead of the 300.